Welcome to the sofa, Lucy Hudson, MD of McCann Birmingham.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for travelling down. Although I feel like you do that quite a lot for work anyway.
Yeah, basically every week.
Still polite to say thank you for it anyway. What does after work mean to you?
After work for me is, it depends. It depends on whether there's a pitch on, it depends what city I'm in, it depends whether my husband's working from home or if I am, it depends where the kids are. Our industry and being an MD in our industry is entirely unpredictable, which is why it's a great job, but why it's a juggle. Yeah. So I think genuinely, when I thought about that question, I thought, I have no idea.
And I really like that answer because it's given me permission to go, it's okay that your life's not consistent because our jobs aren't consistent. Yeah. I always imagined we'd have this schedule and everything would be stuck to. And because of the job and the variety of the job, which we love, it's never that way.
I think sometimes if you put too many guardrails in place, you're creating points of stress that don't need to be there. Sometimes one's going to need to be more important than the other, and sometimes they're going to need to stitch together, and sometimes they're going to blur. And I think if you accept that's okay, and you work in a job where that's accepted to be okay, I think you're probably less stressed than if you're saying, well, no, it's 6 p.m, this is now time for my life bit. It's just not going to work that way.
Yeah. Just before we start our next conversation, I just wanted to issue a trigger warning for anyone out there. We're about to talk about grief and the loss of a child. So to start our conversation, I just wanted you to talk openly about your daughter, Poppy.
Yeah, so Poppy was born in 2016. I apparently only make children with fluorescent blonde hair. I don't know how this has happened. But bright blonde hair, she got to 2 years old, absolute firecracker, and we noticed she was becoming a bit poorly. She was struggling a bit. She'd vomited a couple of times. Again, nothing at 2 years old you'd think that suspiciously about. We went through a couple of weeks of GP visits, didn't think that much of it, and then one day took her to the doctor who said, I'm quite worried about her. I think we need to get her in for a scan. From then on, I didn't go back to work for 3 years. So Poppy was diagnosed with a brain tumour, very, very rare one called ATRT, very aggressive. And at the time, she was given a 20% chance of living through treatment. Me and my husband basically both stopped working that day, cared for her for 10 months until we found out her tumour had metastasised and she was now terminal. And she died about 8 weeks after that. So she was mad. She had the craziest laugh you've ever heard. And I think what I've done ever since then is try to talk as openly as I can about it. So that's why it's really great we're doing this. And I think grief is everywhere and struggle is everywhere and people don't talk about it. And I don't know why.
Well, we're British. Sometimes it comes down to culturally, it's the stiff upper lip. First of all, when you had to very suddenly say to work, I am not going to be there. I do not know how long I'm going to be gone for. Yeah. How did they help support you through that period?
They were brilliant. I think the scary thing that was the uncertainty. Is one day I said, I need to work from home tomorrow. It's pre-COVID, so it was unusual to tell people. Yeah. Because I've got to take my daughter to the doctors. I should be online by lunchtime, I think was the last thing I said. And then they got, a garbled text and then a call a couple of days later of like, this has happened, I'm gone. Like, I can't, I'm being blue lighted in the hospital. Yeah. So, in an ambulance to the hospital. What they did very early on was establish some stability for me, which was incredible. So they said, right, do not worry, we have this covered. We'll be paying you for this amount of time until we revisit and we'll have another conversation. It was just that moment of like, okay,
right,
I can
one less
focus on
thing
this.
To worry about.
Yeah, you're like, I know I should be focused on everything that's happened to my daughter, but I also can't lose my house and I don't know if I don't have an income. And I think the thing people forget when your child's sick and you're there 24 hours, we didn't go home for a month after that. We lived in the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford. And I think what was really, really incredible was the health insurance and support I got through that. And I got a percentage of my salary from McCann while I was off, which meant I had that support. I remember I emailed kind of my senior board at the first Christmas we were off and said, like, I'm having Christmas with my daughter in my home because of you guys, because of the security that McCann's put in place here. Otherwise, I have no idea what we'd be doing. Let's not underestimate the impact work has on personal life, which is probably why I talk so much about, work and personal life being able to meld, because I just think
they are extremely connected.
Yes.
Well, it's all your life.
Yeah.
You can't, we all like to put things in buckets.
Yeah.
You can't.
No.
Everything's
doesn't
like
work.
whoop,
Well,
like that.
just one human.
In terms of semantics, when you were grieving,
Yeah.
and words that were helpful and phrases that weren't,
Yeah.
is there any advice you'd give? Because, essentially people don't know how to deal with grief.
Yeah. And people are terrified of upsetting the grieving person, saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I think what people probably don't appreciate of that is you're a very small part in their day and what they're carrying around. They're already upset, they're already sad, and that's okay. You can look at it, you can see it, you can talk about it, and without making them feel like they have to hide it. And I think I've often used to say to people, and I've worked with a couple of people who've been through similar stuff to kind of help them get back into the workplace. And I've always said, it is not your role to make other people feel comfortable about what happened to you, because I used to do that all the time. People say, I'm so sorry to hear about Poppy. And I remember a couple of times I said, oh, it's okay. What a weird automatic British response. Of course it's not okay. Why am I just didn't want them to feel uncomfortable about it somehow. And I think that's massive. I think
that's not your job to erase how uncomfortable talking about grief is.
One of the big things is doing something or proposing something specific for them. So a couple of my friends would text me and say, we're going to be near your house on Saturday. We'd love to buy some lunch, get some M&S picky bits, come over to your house and have a coffee. How do you feel about that? It's a specific invitation. It's a specific thing they want to do. It's a specific time. I think what people say, which becomes almost a chain around your neck, is let me know what I can do. Let me know if I can help. And it becomes a real meaningless thing. It's really hard to explain. I was diagnosed with PTSD and depression, and I don't know how I'm going to get through to bedtime. I can't. It's like you don't have the brain power to be able to think about almost anything, even eating. So how am I going to work out what I need, put a list of it together and let all these people know who have offered? It's meant so well, but I think just do something.
That's a very important tip, because I think that if I ask a question like, tell me how I can help you,
you're
it's putting the onus on you.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very important and good tip for managers, which is don't ask how you can help, say, here are your options for us to help.
Absolutely. And in the workplace, there's so many things like that in terms of, would you like to look at a more flexible working arrangement? Would you like to look at availability of kind of short-term holiday requests if you suddenly just need a day off? Would you like to look at changing the parameters of your role for a while, so maybe you're not client-facing for a bit? There's all these things you could be suggesting. If they don't want any of those things, they can say, oh no, it's okay. But the fact you've suggested it, rather than saying, because you also don't know what you can and can't ask for. You don't want to be a pain. I think sometimes there's this real guilt of, well, I've already been off work. I had such guilt about it. I've already been off work for this amount of time. Oh my God, they must think I'm such a pain. They must think this, that, and the other. And I think when you're volunteering those things, it makes someone feel appreciated. It makes them feel like they can work their way through it methodically, and it gives them options, and it doesn't make them feel like they're kind of a ball and chain around the organisation's neck.
And didn't you say ask twice?
Yes, ask twice. We're British. We also hate inconveniencing people, and what we've really found is, it's funny, we found it not just with grief, in focus groups and things as well, where you ask someone something and they immediately come back with what they're expected to say, or what's easiest for the person to hear. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine. How are you really? And that's a different answer every time. Every time. They will never just say, I'm fine, to a how are you really? So just take that. It's 2 more seconds. Just take a moment. And that's a really easy tip to put into the workplace. How are you really? Just give them that extra bandwidth to open up a little bit more.
What about body language as well? Because, and actually I was thinking about this as we were doing this interview. I'm very much this is my natural, slightly annoying thing to do. And it's not for everyone. Touching is not for everybody. I like to. That's about me. That's not about you.
I do that. I was at an event the other day and realised I'd held myself for everyone I knew, hi, giving them big cuddles. And they're probably thinking, oh my God.
But when it's a period of grief,
yeah,
that's the type of thing you have to be very careful
I think it's a good thing to, especially in the workplace, it's a good thing to ask.
Yeah.
Because actually, I'm very touchy-feely and I love a cuddle. Brilliant. Some days you can't cope with it. Some days it's too much, and you'll be like, if you hug me right now, I'm going to lose it. So actually, no. But I love that you wanted to, And I think again, it's part of this talking about grief, being open about grief. Once you've broken that seal, you can ask them things like that. But if you're doing this strange, rigid behaviour we all do of not acknowledging it, of course you're second guessing yourself for not knowing how to behave because you've not broached the subject.
You were clever enough to know yourself during your period of grief and understand that you needed to just be out of work for 3 years.
Yeah.
And by the way, you had your second pregnancy underway, and then you had your third pregnancy quite soon after that.
Yeah.
So you were out for a period of 3 years. How did you know when you were ready to go back again?
Can we do you did a trigger warning? Can we do a big privilege warning as well?
Yeah, of course.
It is very unusual for someone to be able to be off work that long and not in the workplace. So I was very lucky to be able to do that. When Poppy was in treatment and when Poppy was terminal and after she died, we lived in this weird world. And I remember our therapist in the hospital said to us, like, you need to exist hour by hour. Once I'd had my second daughter, Nell, and then Bonnie arrived, and my time frame got bigger. I was thinking about, okay, well, we're going to do this week. And we started making plans that were a bit further away. And then with that became like the itchy feet a bit of, and I was still in touch with my friends at work. And I think I gradually got a bit more in touch with them. I found myself asking things like, well, who's running that account now? And whatever happened with this? And I was working on this pitch when I left. And I suddenly realised I was curious again. And that was a big moment of curiosity. And I remember going in to do a kit day, go into the office, sit down, have a chat, go for some lunch. That was the kit day. And I remember at lunch asking all these questions. And someone said, well, it's like you never left. And I thought, I might be able to do this. Like, it might be slow and it might take some time. And actually it didn't. I realised, especially kind of in my role, and I was managing partner at that stage, the transferable skills are the transferable skills. Client relationships and running teams and a commercial head, and I still had all those things. I didn't know if it would work, and it did.
And when you talk about recovery, I mean, that's to do with PTSD. You never recover when it's grief, right? Yeah. So for you to be in the space where you were feeling curious again, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and recovery for me meant lots of other things. Recovery for me meant being able to get the tube to work and not have a panic attack. That's recovery, like being able to have a conversation with someone and not worry if they're going to ask about my kids and what I should say. Like, that's recovery. Wearing makeup and a pair of heels, recovery. I'd spent 3 years in leisure wear. So all the different things. Someone said like, oh, you're always so smart at work. I was like, yeah, you try wearing tracksuit bottoms for 3 years.
Fair enough. Did your grief or your experience change your perspective on work?
It's funny, I think people expect me to say, I've got such perspective and I realise that it really doesn't matter and the only things that matter are my family. And that's all true. But at the same time, I value the bit in me that is a professional working person and what it gives to me in my confidence and in my life and in my contributions to my family and in the examples I set for my daughters and the structure of my week. And actually, I felt like by the end, after that amount of time, once I knew I was getting impatient with work because I was starting to get bored. It wasn't just this heavy weight of, oh my God, how am I going to get through today? It was, I don't know what's this morning again. Like, what else could I do today? And I think it means a lot of different things.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I think it takes a very strong leader to share all of this for the greater good when you've gone through something like the death of a child. So thank you for talking about it.
No problem. I think leadership is about being yourself. I don't know how you do authentic leadership without talking about your life. And it's a huge, huge, huge defining part of my life and who I am. But also it's about, I think, if you're in a situation where you've been through something like that, you've been lucky enough to survive it and come out the other side, and you've got a platform, then talk about it.
And here's hoping that this will help those in an agency, a company, how managers talk to their team about grief.
Yes.
That's the important bit.
Although, so are policies. So it's good for people to think about that as well. Do you have bereavement policies in place? Ask your HR teams, understand what they are. So there is a responsibility in workplaces to make sure they've got these things in place as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I've
you.
been holding back a hug, so we're going to do that now, because it's not about me, it's about you. And I don't know. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.